My parents, who kicked me out at 17 for being gay, called me last month with a tearful apology after 20 years of silence, saying they wanted to make things right and rebuild our relationship. I was crying and healing and finally felt seen. Then, yesterday, they asked if I could donate my kidney to my brother, who they chose over me 2 decades ago. The apology was never real. I haven't stopped shaking since yesterday afternoon when I realized the past month of reconciliation with my parents was an elaborate manipulation to get me to save my brother's life. I'm 37 years old, and I feel like that scared 17-year-old kid again, standing on the porch with a garbage bag of clothes while my father told me I was no longer his daughter. Except this time it's worse because they made me believe they'd changed. They made me hope. And it was all a calculated lie to get what they needed from me. I'm 37F, and I was kicked out of my childhood home 20 years ago when I came out as gay. My parents are Denise and Walter, and they're both religious conservatives who could not accept having a queer daughter. I have one sibling, my younger brother Philip, who's 34M. Growing up, we were close despite the age gap. He was my little buddy. I helped raise him. I loved him fiercely. When I was 17, I told my parents I was gay. I'd known for years, but I'd hidden it because I knew they wouldn't accept it. But I was miserable living a lie, and I thought maybe they'd love me enough to try to understand. I was so wrong. My father told me I had a week to repent and commit to being normal. My mother cried like someone had died. Philip, who was 14 at the time, didn't really understand what was happening. When I didn't repent or pretend to be straight, my father packed my belongings into garbage bags and told me I was choosing sin over family. He said if I walked out that door, I was no longer his daughter. My mother stood behind him crying, but saying nothing. Philip begged them to let me stay. He cried and said I was his sister, and he needed me. My father told him I'd made my choice, and he needed to accept it. I tried to hug Philip goodbye, but my father physically blocked me. He said I'd corrupted enough of his family. I left with 3 garbage bags and $200 I'd saved from my part-time job. I spent the first month couch surfing with friends. Then I got a full-time job and rented a room in someone's house. I finished high school while working full-time. I got scholarships and loans and put myself through community college, then university. I built a life completely alone without any family support. For 20 years, I heard nothing from my parents. No birthday calls. No Christmas cards. Nothing. I tried to reach out a few times in my 20s. I sent letters that went unanswered. I called and got hung up on. Eventually, I stopped trying. I accepted that they'd chosen their religion over their daughter, and that was that. Philip tried to stay in touch at first. He'd call from friends' phones because our parents monitored his. He'd email from school. But our parents found out and forbade him from contacting me. He was still a minor and dependent on them. I understood. The calls and emails stopped. When he turned 18, I hoped he'd reach out, but he didn't. I figured he'd sided with our parents. That hurt more than anything. I built a life anyway. I found my chosen family. I had relationships. I built a career in graphic design. I bought a small house. I have a partner named Sienna, who I've been with for 4 years. My life is good. Not perfect, but good. I'd made peace with being estranged from my family. Or, at least I thought I had. 6 weeks ago, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, a woman's voice said my name. It was my mother. I froze. I hadn't heard her voice in 2 decades. She said she knew this was unexpected, but she and my father wanted to talk to me. She said they'd done a lot of thinking and they wanted to apologize. I should have hung up. Every instinct told me this was a trap. But there was this pathetic part of me that still wanted my parents to love me. That 17-year-old who got thrown out was still inside me, hoping for her family back. So I agreed to meet them for coffee. We met 3 days later at a neutral coffee shop. My parents looked old. 20 years had aged them significantly. My mother's hair was gray. My father had gained weight and moved slowly. They looked at me with these sad expressions, and my mother started crying immediately. She said they were so sorry. She said they'd been wrong about everything. She said they'd let their religious beliefs override their love for their daughter, and they'd regretted it every day for 20 years. My father said he was ashamed of how he'd treated me. He said kicking me out was the worst thing he'd ever done, and he'd spent 2 decades wishing he could take it back. I sat there crying into my coffee. This was what I'd wanted to hear for 20 years. That they were wrong. That they were sorry. That they loved me. My mother reached across the table and held my hand. She said they wanted to rebuild a relationship if I'd let them. She said they knew they didn't deserve it, but they were begging for a chance. I asked what changed. Why now after 20 years? My father said they'd been doing a lot of soul searching. He said they'd lost their church community a few years ago over some doctrinal disagreements, and it made them question a lot of their beliefs. He said they'd realized they'd been wrong about so many things, including how they treated me. My mother said they'd been in therapy. She said the therapist helped them see how much damage they'd done. She said they wanted to make amends while they still could. She said they were getting older, and they didn't want to die estranged from their daughter. We talked for 2 hours. They asked about my life. I told them about my career, my house, my partner. My mother cried when I mentioned Sienna. She said she was so sorry she'd miss getting to know the person I loved. My father said he wanted to meet Sienna if I'd allow it. He said he wanted to know the real me. I left that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in years. My parents loved me. They accepted me. They wanted a relationship. It felt like a miracle. Sienna was skeptical when I told her, but she supported me. She said to take it slow and protect myself, but that if I wanted to try reconciling, she'd be there for me. Over the next month, my parents and I talked regularly. Phone calls several times a week. They asked about my life and actually listened. They told me about their lives. My mother talked about her garden. My father talked about retiring. It felt almost normal. They met Sienna 3 weeks ago. I was terrified, but it went well. My parents were polite and kind. My mother complimented Sienna's work as a teacher. My father asked thoughtful questions about her family. When we left, my mother hugged us both. She whispered to me that Sienna seemed wonderful and she was happy I'd found love. I started to believe this was real, that my parents had actually changed, that I was getting my family back. I started imagining holidays together, my parents meeting my friends, building the relationship we should have had all along. Then yesterday my mother called. She said she and my father needed to talk to me about something important. She said it had to be in person. Could I come to their house? I said yes. I thought maybe they wanted to do something special. Maybe plan a family dinner or talk about me reconnecting with Philip. I drove to their house yesterday afternoon. My childhood home. I hadn't been inside in 20 years. Walking through that door felt surreal. The furniture was different, but the bones of the house were the same. Memories everywhere. My mother made tea. My father sat in the living room. They both looked nervous. My mother started. She said they had something difficult to tell me. She said they hoped I'd understand and help them. I said of course. What was wrong? My father said it was about Philip. I asked what about him. Was he okay? My mother started crying. She said Philip was sick. He had kidney disease. He'd been on dialysis for 2 years. He was on the transplant list, but the wait was long and his health was declining. They were terrified they were going to lose him. I felt terrible for Philip. I asked what I could do to help. My father looked at my mother. She looked at me. Then she said that's actually why they'd reached out to me. They'd been trying to find a donor match for Philip. Family members are more likely to match. They'd both been tested, but neither was compatible. I was his only sibling. They wanted to know if I'd get tested to see if I could donate. The room went silent. I sat there processing what she'd just said. They'd reached out to me because Philip needed a kidney. The apology. The reconciliation. The acceptance of my sexuality and my partner. All of it had been leading to this moment. This ask. They needed something from me, so they'd pretended to love me. I asked them directly. The apology. Was it real, or was this about the kidney? My mother said, of course the apology was real. She said they genuinely were sorry for how they'd treated me. But also, yes, Philip needed help, and they were hoping I'd consider being tested. My father said they would have reached out anyway eventually, but Philip's situation made it more urgent. Asked how long they'd known Philip needed a kidney when they first called me. My mother hesitated. Then she admitted they'd known for 3 months before reaching out. So they'd known he needed a transplant, and then suddenly decided to apologize after 20 years of silence. The timing was not a coincidence. Asked if they would have reached out if Philip didn't need a kidney. My father said they'd been thinking about reconnecting for years. I said that wasn't an answer. Would they have called me 6 weeks ago if Philip was healthy? My mother started crying harder. She said they did want a relationship with me. But yes, Philip's situation had pushed them to finally make the call. I felt like I was going to throw up. Asked if they'd told Philip they were reaching out to me. My father said yes. I asked what Philip said. My father said Philip felt conflicted because he knew why they were really reaching out, but he was desperate. I asked if anyone in this family had considered that maybe lying to me to get an organ was a horrible thing to do. My mother said they weren't lying. They really did want to rebuild a relationship. The kidney situation just happened to overlap. I stood up. I said there was no overlap. The kidney situation was the entire reason they'd called. Everything else was manipulation to make me feel loved, so I'd agree to get tested. My father said I was being unreasonable. He said Philip was dying. He said family helps family. I said they'd told me 20 years ago that I wasn't family. I said they'd kicked me out and spent 2 decades treating me like I didn't exist. Now suddenly I was family because they needed something from me. My mother begged me to understand. She said they knew they hurt me, but Philip was innocent. He didn't kick me out. He'd try to stop them. He loved me. He needed me now. Didn't I love him? I said I'd loved him 20 years ago, when they forbade him from talking to me. I'd loved him for years while he chose to maintain his relationship with them over reaching out to me. My father said I was being selfish. He said this was about saving a life. He said whatever problems we had in the past didn't matter compared to Philip dying. I said the problems absolutely mattered. They'd spent a month making me believe they loved me, when really, they just needed my organs. My mother said they did love me. Asked if they'd still love me if I said no to testing. If I refused to donate, would they still want a relationship? She didn't answer. My father said we could talk about our relationship later. Right now they needed to know if I'd help Philip. That answer told me everything. I asked them to imagine what the last month had been like for me. I said I'd been 17 years old believing my parents would eventually come around. Then I was in my 20s mourning the family I'd lost. Then I was in my 30s accepting they were gone forever. Then suddenly 6 weeks ago they apologized. They said they loved me. They accepted me. They wanted to know me. I said I'd let myself hope. I'd let myself imagine the life we could have had all along. I'd introduced them to my partner. I'd started planning a future that included them. And all of it was fake. All of it was manipulation to get me to give up a kidney. They'd played with my emotions like a game with an organ donation as the prize. My mother said it wasn't like that. I said, then what was it like? She said they did care about me, and they did want a relationship. But also Philip was dying, and they needed to try everything. I said they couldn't have both. They couldn't use me for an organ, and also claim they loved me. They had to choose. My father said I was being dramatic. He said people donate kidneys to family members all the time. It's what you do. I said people donate kidneys to family members who've been family to them, not to people who threw them out and cut them off for 20 years then suddenly remembered they existed when they needed something. I told them I needed to leave. My mother grabbed my arm. She said, please think about it. Please consider getting tested. Even if I didn't want a relationship with them, didn't I want to help Philip? He was my brother. I pulled my arm away. I said Philip stopped being my brother when he chose them over me. I said they'd all made their choices 20 years ago, and now they had to live with them. My father said I'd regret this if Philip died. He said I'd have to live knowing I could have saved him. I said they'd have to live knowing they destroyed 2 children instead of 1. They'd thrown 1 away, and now they were losing the other because of that choice. I left. I drove home sobbing so hard I had to pull over. Sienna was home when I got there. I told her everything. She held me while I cried. She said my parents were monsters. She said using love and acceptance as bait to get an organ was unconscionable. She said I didn't owe them anything. But I can't stop thinking about Philip. He's sick. He needs help. He didn't kick me out. He tried to stop them. Is he responsible for not reaching out as an adult? Yes. But he was raised by people who taught him that loving me was wrong. Maybe he wanted to reach out but didn't know how. Or maybe he did side with them and I'm just making excuses. I don't know if I should get tested. Part of me says Philip is innocent and I should help if I can. Part of me says my parents orchestrated an elaborate manipulation and rewarding that by giving them what they want is teaching them they can use me. Part of me wonders if I could live with myself if Philip dies and I didn't even try to help. I called my parents' house today. Philip answered. I asked if we could talk. He said yes. We talked for an hour. He apologized for not reaching out over the years. He said he thought about me all the time, but he was a coward. He said our parents had controlled his life for so long he didn't know how to break free. He said he still saw them regularly because he was sick and needed support. I asked him about the kidney. He said he felt terrible that our parents had used reconnecting with me as a manipulation tactic. He said he'd told them not to do it. He'd said they should reach out because it was the right thing to do, not because he needed a transplant. But they'd insisted this was the best way. He said he understood if I hated him. I don't hate him. I'm just so tired. I asked Philip if he thought our parents' apology was real. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said he thought they meant parts of it. He thought they did regret kicking me out. But he also thought they wouldn't have acted on that regret right now if he didn't need a kidney. He said the timing was absolutely about his transplant needs. Philip said I shouldn't feel obligated to help him. He said he'd made choices over the years, including not reaching out when he became an adult. He said he understood if I wanted nothing to do with any of them. He said he was sorry for everything. He sounded genuine. But I don't know if I can trust my read on people anymore. My parents fooled me for a month. I'm supposed to decide whether to get tested. If I match, I'm supposed to decide whether to donate. My parents are calling constantly. They're alternating between begging and guilt-tripping. My mother leaves voicemails crying about how I'm killing my brother. My father sends texts about family obligations. They've dropped all pretense of wanting a relationship. Now it's just about the kidney. Sienna says I should block them. She says they're showing me exactly who they are, and I should believe them. She says they're abusive and manipulative and I don't owe them anything. My friends agree. They say my parents used me and I should walk away. But I keep thinking about 17-year-old me begging for love from parents who chose religion over their daughter. And I keep thinking about 34-year-old Philip who's sick and needs help and maybe didn't reach out because he was taught that loving me was wrong. And I keep thinking about me at 37 trying to figure out if saving someone's life is worth rewarding the people who destroyed mine. Reddit, I need perspective. Should I get tested? If I match, should I donate? Can you separate helping your sick brother from rewarding your abusive parents? Is there a world where I can donate a kidney without it meaning I forgive them for 20 years of rejection and a month of manipulation? Or am I just falling for their manipulation again? Am I making excuses for Philip because I desperately want some family member to actually love me? Am I seriously considering major surgery for people who proved last month that they don't actually care about me at all? I don't know what to do. Every option feels wrong. Donating feels like saying what they did was okay. Not donating feels like letting Philip die out of spite. Getting tested feels like opening a door I should keep closed. Not getting tested feels like abandoning someone who might be innocent in this mess. Tell me what to do, Reddit, because I genuinely cannot figure this out on my own. Is an apology that turned out to be manipulation enough reason to refuse to help save someone's life? Or is a sick brother who maybe loves me enough reason to forgive 20 years of abandonment and a month of lies? I feel like that 17-year-old again. Confused and hurt and wanting so badly to be loved that I'll accept crumbs. But I'm 37 now. I should know better. I should be able to see manipulation for what it is. So, why am I still considering helping them after everything they've done? Update: I made my decision and I need to share what happened because it's been the most emotionally exhausting week of my life. I got tested. I'm a match. And I'm not donating. Let me explain. After posting, I spent 2 days agonizing over what to do. I decided I needed to at least find out if I could help before making a final decision. So I went through the testing. The transplant center was very thorough. They do psychological evaluations of potential donors to make sure they're not being coerced. During my evaluation, I was honest about the situation. I told the psychologist that my parents had kicked me out 20 years ago and only recently reconnected to ask for a kidney. She was very concerned. She asked a lot of questions about my relationship with my family and whether I felt pressured. I said I felt conflicted but not pressured by Philip specifically. The results came back. I'm a perfect match for Philip. When the transplant coordinator called with the results, my parents were apparently in the room with Philip. I could hear my mother crying with relief in the background. The coordinator said we could schedule the surgery as soon as I was ready. I said I needed time to think. My parents started calling immediately. They were so grateful. They kept saying I was saving their son's life. They said they knew I'd do the right thing. They said family comes through in the end. They were already assuming I'd agreed to donate just because I'd gotten tested. I called Philip directly. I told him I was a match. He said he knew. He said our parents were ecstatic. I said I hadn't decided yet whether I was going to donate. There was a long silence. Then he said he understood. He said the decision was mine, and he'd respect whatever I chose. I asked Philip a hard question. If I donated, would our parents maintain a relationship with me afterward? He was quiet. Then he said honestly, he didn't think so. He said they'd be grateful in the moment, but once the crisis was over, they'd probably go back to their old beliefs. He said they hadn't actually changed. They'd just been desperate. That's when I knew. Philip was telling me the truth. My parents' reconciliation was fake. It was purely transactional. They needed something from me, so they'd pretended to love me. Once they got what they needed, I'd be disposable again. I called my parents. I said I'd gotten tested, and I was a match. My mother started thanking God. My father said he knew I'd come through. I said I wasn't finished. I said I'd realized over the past week that their apology was never real. The reconciliation was manipulation. They didn't love me or accept me. They just needed my kidney. My mother said that wasn't true. I said then prove it. I said I'd donate to Philip on one condition. They had to maintain an active relationship with me for at least a year before the surgery. Weekly dinners. Regular communication. Meeting my friends. Treating Sienna like family. Basically prove that they actually wanted me in their lives and not just my organs.